Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cartalicchio. I want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, Finding Function in a Dysfunctional World. I'm really excited today for our guest. We met a little bit ago and we're becoming fast friends. And we just did a podcast before the podcast. We were talking about a whole bunch of stuff. And I want to welcome Dr. Doni Wilson to the program today. Dr. Doni, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you so much, Dan. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to have a great conversation. We're going to talk about stress. Everybody's stressed today with what's going on in the world. But let me get Dr. Doni's bio down. Now, Dr. Doni, you can just sit back because I'm just going to read a little bit and see, and then so that the audience knows who you are. You're a naturopathic doctor, professional midwife, clinical nutritionist, best-selling author, researcher, natural products formulator, and mother practicing in the New York tri-state area, Manhattan, Long Island, Connecticut. I've had offices in those areas and virtually in regions throughout the world. You hold a doctorate of naturopathic medicine from Bastyr University, certified professional midwife, doula, although you're not going there at the time, certified nutrition specialist. Boy, it sounds like me. Instead, I'm a DC and you're the ND. Completed her residency at Bastyr. You've helped thousands of women, men, children find solutions to the most puzzling problems. You use advanced lab testing, investigative techniques, uncover the root cause. You look at stress a lot, and you have a brand new book out. You're a best-selling author, Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health. Dr. Doni, welcome. So what does that mean, master your stress, reset your health?
I love that. Thank you for asking me that. I thought a lot about that in choosing the name of this book, because the thing is that I think even more now after coming through the pandemic, people are aware of being stressed, right? We're aware that we're exposed to stress and more aware that we're feeling the stress. And I'm having more people call me and say, Dr. Doni, I'm stressed. What do I do? And the thing is that, it's tempting to either ignore it, think we're supposed to just power through, or sort of like just try to find a way to deal with it. Or a lot of times we use the word manage the stress. Right. And to me, the thing is it just feels like that's somehow just settling, right? That we just have to settle that it's true that stress is going to be there and it exists. But what the difference is I encourage people to instead look at it from a slightly different perspective. How can we embrace our stress? How can we embrace the fact that we're going to be exposed to it as humans? That's just part of being a human on Earth. We're going to have a stress response. We have a built-in stress response system. So we're going to respond to the stress. Those things are given. So how do we then learn how to be healthy while stressed? Because the key is that we don't want that stress to end up making us predisposed to health issues. So this is why it's master your stress. How do you become resilient to stress? What choices can we make so that we can be as healthy as can be, even though we're living in a stressful existence?
I agree. And I have a lot of my patients that are coming and everybody seems to be stressed. That's like the buzzword right now. And, coming out of the pandemic, we're stressed. That seems to be the pandemic out of this pandemic. And it's one of those situations where I'm getting this all the time. Now, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of questions. And so when you say embrace the stress, how do you do that? What does that mean? Because, there's good stress that you can embrace. There's bad stress that you can embrace. And so what does that look like? Is Miss Kitty all over the place today?
I know, you hear that? I'm like, what is that?
That's okay. I'm telling you, and I'll tell you the story afterwards. Nothing gets cut out, Dr. Doni. We just roll. We are real and raw here. That's a story for after the podcast. So
I'll have to let you know what that was. But anyway, for now they're okay. I definitely have my cats. They're in the room. But
somewhere.
And that's the thing is when you're asking about, what are the different types of stresses? Sometimes even that, right? Like you're doing something. Here we are having a conversation and then a sound happens. And it's like, right away, the adrenaline starts going, right? The blood starts pumping, the mind starts racing. This is this built-in stress response I'm talking about. And sometimes stress comes in the form of something unexpected, unpredictable, like a sound or even the alarm going off, or it could also be a relationship stress, financial stress. A lot of times we think of these psycho-emotional stresses, a death in the family, for example. One of the biggest stresses I find with my patients is, I always say these two are so common. Having a wedding in the family, either someone getting married or, maybe a relative getting married. Somehow planning a wedding is stressful, and moving, when people have to go through their house, all their things, pack it up in a box and move to another location. Those are huge stresses. But there's also stresses in terms of, I would consider any toxins we're exposed to as also a stress on our bodies, right? Because our body has to then adapt and detoxify from that toxin, whether it's a pesticide or a mold toxin.
Right.
There's also toxins in the forms of infections, injuries, medications, lack of sleep, certain foods could be a stress, processed foods or high sugar intake, right? So when you start to realize, like, this is why I say we can't, there's certain stresses we could choose differently about, but there's also stress that's just going to be part of life. And so, I don't want to just say throw in the towel and don't do anything. I want to say, acknowledge that stress exists. Now, how can we choose differently to maybe reduce, but also choose differently to give our bodies anti-stress and stress recovery?
That's important. During my life, such as you, I had offices on Long Island, I had an office in Connecticut, and I had an office in New Jersey simultaneously. And so my partners, it became very stressful. I went from being a D1 athlete to, being 195 pounds, rock solid. Although my son doesn't believe that. I can't find a picture from those days. And to 260 pounds. And I had this cardiac event. I had a mild heart attack. My triglycerides were 1,227. So there's many different types of stresses you can get. Physical stress, medications and toxins and processed foods, emotional stress. We had over 100 employees at that time. So what do you do? Healthcare was changing. People's lives were at stake. But, a lot of people during this past couple of years, they went for the processed foods. Let's talk about that for a second. How bad is that? How bad is processed foods? And it taxes your body, it stresses your body, right?
Well, that's the thing is, when we say processed foods, what I'm thinking is anything that's essentially like in a box, where they made it in a factory and then put it into a package, and then the thing is it's tempting because it's so easy. We just grab it. They make really looks tasty on the box, and it's easy. We don't have to cook anything. We're just grab and go. When you look on the back of the package, that's when it's eye-opening, where you look at the ingredients and you're like, first I'm looking for sugar or anything that's sugar, but going by a different name, right? So we have to be like, if there's sugar of some sort in this food, then right away it's added sugar that we don't need. And as soon as we are consuming more sugar, it's more work and stress for our bodies.
That's right.
Unnecessary.
And during this time, everybody was going for that. And I remember reading an article several years ago, Mayo Clinic proceedings, and they were talking about, ultra processed foods. I don't remember any of the science. The p-values, all of that stuff. I don't remember, Dr. Doni. But what I do remember is that they were highly affordable, highly palatable, and readily available. Those are the bulls that I remember when we were taking a look at this article. Now, here's a question I have for you. Why stress? How did you get involved with studying stress, researching stress? We all have personal, my whole thing, I became a functional medicine physician because of my heart attack. What was that moment in time that you said, I need to look at stress because this is important in my life?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I found myself when I was at Bastyr University, you mentioned in my bio, I was training as a midwife, and I'm not sure exactly what motivated me into this interest, but I started, as part of my midwifery degree, I had to complete research. And so I chose to research fear of labor and stress during labor. So what happens when women have a history of abuse, let's say, and now they're going through childbirth, or what impact does stress and trauma have on women in labor? It was I learned so much from that. What I saw is that for normal labor process to happen, we need a certain amount of our stress hormones. We need a certain amount of cortisol and adrenaline for labor to work. But if we have too much stress, if we have too much cortisol and adrenaline, labor stops. And so it's a matter of how do we help the body have a normal process of cortisol and adrenaline, but how do we also give women support, such as in the form of a doula, so that this cortisol and adrenaline doesn't go too high, so that labor is effective. So then what happened is I finished at Bastyr, finished my degrees, and I moved to New York in November 2001, right after 9/11. So I landed in the tri-state area right after 9/11, and I had this thought: can I apply the same thing I learned from women in labor to all humans going through major stress? How can I help my patients recover from that major stress of 9/11? Do they also need an optimal cortisol and adrenaline? And how do we create that? And so from there, I just started researching. Now, I also, for myself, had just come from medical school and midwifery training where I didn't get very much sleep. And then I had my daughter, who's now 19 years old, but I wasn't getting sleep. I was so exhausted. I was so stressed. And I finally measured my cortisol and adrenaline levels, and they were like they were non-existent, basically.
Right.
I was like completely bottomed out on my cortisol and adrenaline. And I was like, in naturopathic medical school, we learn about adrenals and adrenal fatigue and adrenal exhaustion, but I did not realize that I was in severe adrenal exhaustion. And so at the same time as I was figuring out how to help my patients recover from stress, I was figuring out how to help myself recover from stress. Meanwhile, I was getting severe migraines, and I didn't want to tell anybody I was getting migraines because I thought I'm supposed to be able to fix this. And so in the subsequent 22 years, I solved my migraines, and I figured out how to recover from what I call adrenal distress. You know, you're familiar with it too. And I really worked hard to find words that are more accurate. So I call it adrenal distress. And so that's how it started, was just being in that stressful situation and figuring out, I got to find a way. I want to be able to help my patients. I want to be able to get rid of my migraines. There's got to be a way that we can do this, just like women can successfully have babies, right? There's got to be a way we can successfully thrive in our lives without stress having to, completely bring it to a halt.
Yeah, having this deleterious effect that's going on. And during those days post 9/11, I grew up in northern New Jersey. The World Trade Center towers were, relatively close. If it's a straight line, it was probably 8 miles. And I was on the Belt Parkway, and it was a beautiful day. And there was a report that a small plane went into the World Trade Center. That was on the radio.
I know.
And Dr. Doni, right? I mean, my first thought was, what fool did this? Right. And you kind of laugh it off. You're saying, that's it, you laugh it off, but you're saying, what happened? But I will tell you, when it stopped the traffic on the Belt Parkway and you were able to see, Manhattan, and we saw the first tower tumble, it went from brown smoke to red smoke. And I will tell you, it was a very stressful situation. There was a lot of emotions and a lot of stress going on during that time. You didn't feel too well post that. And I like the term adrenal distress, adrenal fatigue, adrenal exhaustion. We always try to put these descriptive terminologies on conditions, because when I was told my adrenals were shot, I said, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean?
What does that mean exactly?
Talk a little bit more about, what does that mean, adrenal distress? Because I find this with my patients all the time.
Yeah. Yep. And not only what does it mean, but what do we do about it? Right. Because
that was my follow-up question. Yes.
yeah, because
Sure.
it's like so much of the time I think people can kind of figure out, oh, my adrenals are in trouble. But then I've never seen, a good strategic plan for recovery. And so that's when I had, okay, I got to figure this out, because it's not good enough to me to just diagnose, right? That's so much of our medical experiences. Let me just get a diagnosis, but then what?
Then you have to have that follow-up. What's that program of care, as we call it, in order to help somebody out? Because without that, that's nice. I have hyperlipidemia. Okay, what does that mean now? I got to do something about it. What is a protocol you use for adrenal distress? What do you do? If I were to come see you today, what would that look like?
Well, and here exactly. So this comes back to your prior question too. So what I do is I first want to know, what does adrenal distress look like for you, for each individual? Because to me, it's so unique. And this is something I actually collected the data from hundreds of patients that I'm constantly been running cortisol levels and adrenaline levels. So I can collect the data and I can look at it and see that we don't all have the same situation. Adrenal distress is not the same for all of us. We need to know exactly what it is for you. For example, let's see. So just let me start by saying that in a healthy state, we should have some cortisol, usually higher in the morning, gradually decreasing through the day. We should have some adrenaline. We need some adrenaline. Both of them are signaling throughout our bodies all the time. So it's not about having zero. It's about having an optimal amount for you. So what happens is when we're exposed to acute stresses or chronic stresses, these levels shift. Our bodies are going to adapt and try to protect us from the stress. And when they protect us from stress, the cortisol levels could go higher at different times a day. They could go lower at certain times a day. Adrenaline could go higher or lower, and it can get stuck there is the key. I call it stress mode. We get stuck in stress mode, whatever that is for you as an individual. In fact, in the new book, the Master Your Stress book, I identified 5 stress types, which are the 5 most common stress mode patterns, where one of them might have high cortisol, high adrenaline. And a lot of people assume that, a lot of times we assume if I'm under stress, I probably have high cortisol, adrenaline, but it's not everyone. And so we need to measure it. We can measure, these are tests, you can do at home. Usually you can measure cortisol in saliva or urine. We want to make sure we're measuring it at different times of day, because it could be different in the morning than the middle of the day, than the evening and the bedtime. You can do the collection at home, send it in. Adrenaline can be measured in urine, in a urine sample. We send that in. Now we know. To me, it's like if you go to the shopping mall and you have no idea where you are. You're wandering. You can't find your car. You're searching. But if you have these test results, it's like, here you are on the map.
Right.
Once we know where you are on the map, is your cortisol too high or low? Is your at certain times of day? Is your adrenaline too high or low? Now I can actually guide you out of it. I can help you get from point A to point B, which is the recovery, because the treatments are different. So definitely we know from research that the herbs that will help decrease cortisol that's too high is different than the herbs that will raise the cortisol that's too low. So we don't want to if you just go out and buy any old adrenal product. In fact, often what I see is
it's a hodgepodge of everything in there, right?
Yeah, it's meant to address high or low cortisol, but that's not going to be effective.
No.
Where does that leave you?
Nothing. It goes like this, your cortisol. It goes going like this. And you're like this. You're like, oh, what a ride we got today, You're
basically getting nowhere. It's just treading water. And so I'm like, no, I won't. If we know your cortisol's high, we're going to use nutrients and herbs that bring it to, and it's not to bring it to zero. It's to bring it to optimal. It's about helping the adrenal or the stress response system to correct. Right. It's not a Band-Aid, right? Because a lot of people think, well, is this just make another supplement to swallow, just a Band-Aid? No, it's not. It's actually helping your stress response system get back to optimal, which is amazing. Now you're at a baseline again, and you can start fresh. You can be able to say, now how do I maintain these healthy levels?
Right.
from here. And the thing that in this book, what I also did is I went through all the research on every kind of stress recovery tool and activity you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise or anything that we've heard of for helping with stress.
Mm-hmm.
In the research, are some of these activities better at lowering cortisol that's too high, raising cortisol that's too low?
Mm-hmm.
There's certain times of day that a person should be choosing this based
Mm-hmm.
on their stress type. So this is what I have in the book, is like your guide to how to recover from stress based on your specific response to stress, not just general.
You know what? I love this because I think it gets very specific on what you need to do in order if you have a certain stress type. So you mentioned that there's 5 stress types. Okay, I'm interested in this. What are the 5 stress types? Because I want to figure out which one I am, right?
Of course. Of course.
I'm definitely high cortisol, high adrenaline, high blood pressure. Everything's high. That's all. It just goes. I'm Italian American. We just go. We just go. So
well, we gotta measure your levels again if you haven't had them measured lately, so we can see for sure. But
I haven't had my levels measured lately, and I do it with all of my patients, by the way.
Okay, it's your turn now. It's your turn.
All right, on our next podcast, I'm going to start measuring, and we'll go. All right, we'll go from there.
Yes,
and
we
we'll
want to
figure
know
that out.
Yes, now your listeners are going to want to know for sure. I mean, in the book, I have a quiz that I developed so that you can go somewhat based on your symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can get you close to knowing your stress type. But to me, really, the optimal is to do the test so you know for sure. And so, yes, in that situation, say you have high cortisol, high adrenaline, I call that the stress magnet. And, so that could be, then you're, right. It's one of those where we just keep saying, yes, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. Next thing we know, and it's because we have the cortisol and adrenaline to respond, right, and to keep going. But at the same time, at a certain point, that high cortisol and adrenaline starts disrupting digestion and disrupting immune
Mm-hmm.
system and hormones and neurotransmitters. Right. So we don't, even as tempting as it is to use all the energy that high cortisol and adrenaline give us, there's the downside that it mm-hmm. also increases risk of health issues. Then there's the opposite of that, having low cortisol, low adrenaline, which is what I described as me. That's the blonde blue stress type, where it's just like, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm out. It's going to be fatigue, much more likely feeling fatigued and low mood. And mm-hmm. like, if I get to that place, I'm just like, oh my gosh, please someone pull me off the floor here. I'm dragging. And then from there, it's there's also the night owl who mm-hmm. has more like high cortisol and adrenaline in the evening. So mm-hmm. now they're having a hard time going to sleep, or they're waking up in the night. So there's that type, and there's also the variations where you can have, and sometimes these are tricky, where you could have high cortisol, low adrenaline, or low cortisol, high adrenaline. And the tricky thing about these two types is it's tempting to just dive in and address the thing that's low. Mm-hmm. So it's tempting to address the low cortisol or the low adrenaline. But what I've seen is that is not going to work. In fact, the person often feels worse if they just start addressing their cortisol and adrenaline. If the other one is high, we have to first bring down the one that's too high, whether it's cortisol or adrenaline.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's why in my stress recovery protocol, there's 3 phases. So we have to start. Phase 1 is all about getting out of stress mode. We mm-hmm. have to calm down whatever's too high, cortisol, adrenaline. We also need to support the calming part of the nervous system, GABA, serotonin. Mm-hmm. We got to get out of that stress mode and get things to calm down. Then we can go to phase 2, where we can do all kinds of rebalancing, including your favorite, including gut health. We got to rebalance mm-hmm. the gut biome, heal leaky mm-hmm. gut. We got to balance hormones, blood sugar, because this is what all got disrupted by stress. And mm-hmm. once we're out of stress mode, we're going to be so much more effective at rebalancing, right? If we're still in stress mode, it's still disrupting everything.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. So it's got to be in the phases. It got to be in a sequence to be successful.
You know what? I love the sequence because it makes sense. It makes scientific sense, and it makes that common sense where you're like, okay, we need to do this, we need to do this, and then we can move forward. And it's tough to get out of stress mode, isn't it? Do you find that you have a difficult? I find I have a difficult time with patients doing this. And I mean, I remember talking, Dr. Doni, I remember talking to one patient in the middle of the pandemic, and they were just stressed. I mean, the kids are home, homeschooling is going on, you can't go out, people are just stressed. And I had said to this particular patient, I said, listen, get your kids, go to the park. There's a nice park by where you live, I said, and just go. It's snow out, it's this, it's cold. I said, if you don't want to go along the pathway, because if there's people jogging and you don't want to be, I said, just go in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Go in the middle. And I will tell you, she said, you know what? She's calling me up, she's crying. And she goes, I took off my shoes, my socks, I took off my snow boots, rolled up my pants. I did it with my kids, and we're running in the field. She goes, I had such a good time, doing that. And her stress levels come down. You can hear the stress levels were coming down. And so I was like, I'm a miracle worker, I said to myself. I said, I just gave you a little suggestion, because really what I'm doing is I'm saying to myself, I got to go to my Rolodex. That's how old I am. I got to go to my Rolodex, and I got to figure out what's the appropriate referral for this particular individual. Because controlling that initially, it's just like anything. If you can't control your bad diet and you had that heart attack, I could give you all the supplements. You can't out supplement a bad diet, and you can't, out stress this type of a situation unless this stress is going to be managed and you're resilient with that stress. Wow, I love this. So stress, it works on the mental, the physical, the emotional. It just hammers everything. That's what I say to patients. It just hammers everything that you have.
Yes.
I mean, and then it's just this circle. It's like you're the gerbil on the wheel. It just perpetually goes until you crash and burn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And your hormones, your diet, your immune system's all over the place. Here, diet. What has diet got to do with stress?
Well, we touched on earlier, like sugar, how stressful it is on our blood sugar levels, but also, there's so many ways. In fact, in the book, what I do is I have a section on I use the acronym CARE, like self-care. So C is for clean eating, A is for adequate sleep, R is for recovery activities, and E is for exercise. These are the foundational activities that help us, yes, get out of stress mode, but also prevent stress mode from happening again. And so in the clean eating chapter, I go through all the ins and outs of your question, which is to say, sometimes it has to do with the types of choosing. Certainly there's some foods that are more inflammatory, like we know gluten and dairy, for example, are known to be very common inflammatory foods. As humans, our immune system tries to protect us from the proteins in the dairy and gluten. And we can test for that too, right? We can do a test and see which foods are inflammatory for your body, so we can get specific. But it's also about timing of meals and size of meals, right? If we eat too much food, ultimately our body has to digest the food, absorb the nutrients, manage the blood sugar. It's like there's a lot of work that has to happen. And if we consume too much at one time, our bodies can get overwhelmed with that, and that can lead to health issues. So it's a matter of how much food to consume and how often to take a break from eating, like overnight as a intermittent fast, right? And how to learn all the ins and outs of that as a individual. How do we feed ourselves in a way that's going to be matching our physiology and not causing more stress?
Yeah, you're talking my language. I mean, you sound like me in my office, and to do this food sensitivity test, in my opinion, it is a game changer. We find out specifically what's causing that low grade inflammation, what you should be eating. and what you should be avoiding. And I find once we do this test, and once it's done and we put together a diet, because you can, listen, Dr. Doni, you can eat a Mediterranean diet, arguably one of the best diets out there, right? But there may be components of that diet that just don't work well for us, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so you have to do that. Now, I always, you know what? When I'm stressed, I get foul. I'm sour. My mood is poor. I can't think straight. I got that brain fog type of a thing. You know,
Yeah.
don't even come near me. You know, my son is like, Dad, you're in a real bad mood today. You know, I'm like, yeah, that's right. You better watch out. Talk about how the stress affects our mood and our personalities. You get these personality disorder things going on, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. We in our medical system, we have names for it, but I tend not to go for, to focus on as much
Right.
on the labels. I'm like, I just want to, like you're saying, identify it as this is the signs of stress. This is how your body is showing you that it's stressed and needs help.
Mhm.
And I love your mentioning mood, because I mentioned 5 different areas that I pay attention to: your energy level, your
Mhm.
mood, your sleep, your focus, your ability to kind of complete tasks, and any symptoms in your body. So when we look at mood, this might show up as what we might call anxiety, or
Mhm.
sometimes it's worry or fears, or
Mhm.
nervousness. We have different words to describe that experience, or sometimes it
Right.
turns into
Right.
either irritability, grumpiness, or a low mood, just
Yeah.
feeling completely, apathetic about and unmotivated about your life.
Grumpy old men, just like I am. No, 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 no. So that's remember that movie, Grumpy
Yes, I
Old
do.
Men? It
I
was
do.
Walter Matthau and anyway. So anyway,
Yes, it
so
can, and the thing is that it's your question is, how does it affect us? Well, cortisol itself affects mood. So if cortisol is too high or too low, both are associated with depression and anxiety. So
anxiety and
we
depression, right?
then the cortisol disrupts the neurotransmitters, which are those neurochemicals we're thinking of. And, like we usually think of serotonin and
Mhm.
dopamine and GABA, for example. And in our conventional medical world, we're led to believe that those are only addressed with medications, but
Mhm.
actually our bodies make those neurotransmitters from amino acids from
Mhm.
protein in our diet every
Mhm.
day. So those are actually made in our body, and if
Right.
we can measure them too. And if serotonin or GABA is low, or dopamine, we can use nutrients, amino acid therapy, which I've been helping patients with for 20 years
It
to,
helps out. It helps out significantly, right?
yeah, so we can actually, if we see the levels low, we use the right nutrient to raise the level up, and now your body's making it itself again. You don't have to necessarily, now medications of course have their time and
Mhm.
and that they're necessary, but I always love people to know that there's ways to address neurotransmitters and mood with, by supporting your body.
Right.
And then of course cortisol disrupts digestion, and then because
Mhm.
of the gut brain axis, the imbalanced gut bacteria, that disrupts mood. So whenever I'm helping someone with mood, I want to look at all the factors. Is this, how much is inflammation from food? How much
Mhm.
is it from leaky gut or
Mhm.
imbalanced gut bacteria? How much is imbalanced neurotransmitters or nutrient deficiencies? We need to look at all of that,
Mhm.
because those are the things that stress causes. And if we just leave it unaddressed, to me, it would be like if someone had anemia and we just said, oh, just leave it. Oh, no, we're going to want to address the anemia. let's
Absolutely.
let's fix this.
That's the spiral downward, because then the stress causes so many different physical ailments that can go down, and the food sensitivities, the deficiencies in the vitamins and the minerals, aka the micronutrients, then we start getting poor health. Our body begins to break down, our brain begins to break down, we begin to break down. Because I'm sure you find in your office, I have tissues in every room. People are crying, they have their life back, and I think that what we do is we give people hope. There's other strategies,
Mhm.
besides taking a pill. I have a mom right now, where I'm stepping into her treatment. She's got lung cancer. It's not fatal. And so she's getting a pill for this, a pill for this. I said, all right, that's it. I've had enough, and not that the pills are bad, but now she can't eat. Now she needs an appetite, blah, blah. to increase. I'm like, no. There's definitely better strategies to get nutrients into your system and to get them up and going. Now you have, and I read this on your website, you have a 7-day and a 21-day stress remedy program. What is that all about? Tell me about that.
So the 7-day stress reset actually is, I'm happy to give your viewers a chance to, do that for free, as a gift.
Oh, awesome.
Yes. So they can do the 7-day stress reset. And this is all about helping you. Like you mentioned, it can be hard to get out of stress mode. So this is the idea behind the 7-day stress reset, is to start down the path of getting out of stress mode. And one of the keys here is that, there's something called hormesis, right? There's homeostasis and there's hormesis. And it's we're so much overachievers, right? We always want to do more and do it better and do it longer. And and the thing is, if we do that, we end up doing too much and causing more stress. So with hormesis, what it is we want to create some change so that our body knows that we want to do something different, but we don't want to create so much change that we cause more stress. So in the 7-day stress reset, I teach you how to make small incremental changes in your diet, your sleep, your recovery activities, and your exercise, so that you're starting to build this foundation of stress recovery without stressing yourself out more.
Right.
And that's what starts to happen in the 7-day stress reset. And then, the 21-day is a program I developed from my first book called The Stress Remedy. And now I'm also developing a whole self-care program where after the 7-day stress reset, I'm guiding you further. How do we actually successfully implement the stress recovery and use self-care over time to be resilient to stress?
Awesome. That's very kind. Thank you very much. So for all of my listeners that are out there, I'm going to have a link in the show notes. Go there and sign up and let Dr. Doni's magic, help you out. That's what I always say. It's always the magic to help out patients, because this is extremely important. I found myself being stressful during these times, and especially in the beginning. Did you find yourself to be stressful in the beginning of this whole, were you stressful?
Well, anytime we're kind of thrown into an unknown, right? Like as humans, we like things to be somewhat predictable and structured. And whenever we're thrown into an unknown, already it turns up our stress response. And I think that's what happened, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, was like, we don't know how long, we don't know what's going to happen. There's so many what ifs that it turns up the stress response. And for me, it was because I was like you, so used to going to multiple offices. I was hardly ever home. I was constantly on the move. And so for me to be home was like, what am I supposed to do now? But I figured it out. I started a podcast, and I'm hoping you'll come on my podcast too.
If you're asking, I'm on. I'm 100% Dr. Doni. I'll be there. We can set that up after we get off of here. Because our motto here is to motivate, educate, and inspire. So if individuals are listening to this 10 years from now, it could be a senior citizen such as I. It could be a young person, male, female, in high school. And, if we can motivate, educate, and inspire them to a higher level of existence, higher health, that's what we're here for. That's what we do. And that's how we do this. So, okay, Dr. Doni, we're almost done here. And it goes quick, doesn't it? When you're in the podcast, right? You're rocking.
It's so much fun. Thank you. And
we got the banter go back and forth. So tell me, when's the book come out? May 3rd?
The book, this one you see over my shoulder, Master Your Stress, it's out May 3rd. And when you can get it at where you normally get books, Amazon and all the other places. When you go and order the book, then please tell me, because then I'm going to send you all kinds of thank you gifts and support. Yes. So you can go to, I'll give you this link also. It's at drdoni.com, and then just do /MSRH, which is Master Stress Reset Health.
MSRH. Dr. Doni, there's no period between doctor and Doni, right?
There's not. Yeah. So spell it out though.
Got it.
DoctorDoni.com, and then /MSRH. And then you can tell me you ordered the book, so then I can give you all kinds of support for utilizing the book, because I want people to get the most out of this. That's the thing. I poured so much. I mean, that's the other thing I did during the pandemic is I wrote this book, and I felt so inspired by the stress we were experiencing during the pandemic to say, what are we going to do to recover from this? And that's what's in this book. You know, I'm so glad
That's amazing
to be in people's hands and help them.
That's amazing. I will tell all my readers, I have mine coming. Mine is on its way, by the way. So,
good.
You know, I was talking with my people were talking with your people, Dr. Doni, and we were able to work it out. I'm gonna get my copy. So I'm looking forward to delving into the book. And I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna have another podcast or so. We'll see. Let's see, and let's discuss the book, and let's discuss what's in this book, and so that we can help motivate, educate, and inspire individuals, because that's in part why we are here. And you've written a bunch of other books, right? Stress remedies. It's an ebook. Insomnia, because when you're stressed, you just don't sleep, right?
Yes, that happens sometimes. These night owls, and then stress warrior. I know I love writing about stress because to me it's like it's such an important concept for us to understand. It's so misunderstood, and yet if we can understand it and know, like, I joke, we don't come with an instruction manual. You know, as humans, we aren't born with an instruction manual, so we have to figure it out along the way in order to take care of ourselves, to improve our longevity and our well-being. So this is just, to me, this is your, I'm hoping it's somewhat of an instruction manual for everyone. Here's how to help support your health and your body so that you can be as healthy as you can be and live good quality of life.
Yeah, you know what? You want to live a good quality of life. One of the things that are coming out of the last couple of years is that you want to have a good quality of life. You want to live full. You want to live to the fullest. You don't want to be sour all the time.
And there's so much we can do to help. That does, that can be, and once you start, like, this is the thing, is don't feel overwhelmed with it. Like, it's these small incremental steps of learning, and self-compassion is so important in the process. Right? We have to learn how to turn off that critical voice and really turn on the self-compassion so that we can learn through the process, forgive ourselves for our past, and move forward in a different way.
Oh boy, you just opened up a whole new podcast. Forgive our past. Dr. Doni, we can go on for days about that one. And I'm looking forward to the insomnia book, because I have insomnia. I'm that quintessential entrepreneur, and I'm up at 2:00. I got my pen and paper, and I could be up at 4:00, and I'm going like this. It gets a little, at the age of 60, it gets a little bit, but you know what? I'm looking forward to that book too. So for all of my listeners, okay, it's coming out May 3rd, you said, right? Master your stress, reset your health. I'm getting my copy. I want you to get your copy, and you can go along with us. As a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, we're going to do some lives, and we're going to discuss. We can have a little Q&A if you're game for that, Dr. Doni.
I love it.
Yeah, and we can have some fun with that. So I'm looking forward to getting mine. So again, I'm going to have in the show notes, Dr. Doni is going to send you some information. Once you get the book, I'll have that, and we're going to get the link for the 7-day stress reset. Okay, so that we can get you into that and you can start learning more. So Dr. Doni, thank you very much for being here today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on. And I look forward to our next conversation in about a month or so, maybe a little bit less. We'll figure that out, and we'll have a good time, and we'll motivate, educate, and inspire. So thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for listening today. Get the book. All right, because the next time that you see me, that's the first question I'm going to ask. Did you get Dr. Doni's book? I don't care who I'm interviewing that day. All right, did you get the book? Master your stress, reset your health. I'll have, there's the cover. Okay, there it is. I will have in the show notes
Yeah.
the Amazon link for you to get the book. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you, Dr. Doni. It's been great conversing with you. We'll talk again soon. Take care, everybody. Live your best life.